And crime and violence must stop.
Thanks for tuning back again to the Morning Insider. Yes, it is the Morning Insider. Bless upon yourself. It's match day. It's Reggae Girls. I'm going to preview that game as well, and also I will get into the JPL games that played yesterday as well. I don't know, no TV game. I would like to know what is going on with the broadcasters, Sportsmax and PFLJ. What happened? Owen Hill, Chris Williams. What happened? Why there's no game broadcast? Yesterday it's Monday night. No game broadcast on Sunday as well. Some very, very big games, played over the weekend, and the fans in the diaspora could not even have that opportunity to watch that game. I'm going to get into it as well. So right after this, I will get right into the video. It's match day, people. It's match day. The Reggae Girls will come up against, the L3 women team, Mexico. It's a tough game that we played on Saturday. It will be a tougher game, later today. Trust me, it will be a tougher game later today. Why? I think, look, it's in Houston. This is their backyard. This is where a lot of Mexicans reside, living currently at this moment. I wouldn't say there's no Mexican living in Kansas City, but I guarantee a lot of those people, would drive at a very good distance to get into that venue to watch their beloved Mexican, team, the national team. This is in this region, it's the best supported national team. You understand? But look, I was very disappointed, in the game that we played, on Saturday, in Kansas. A lot of stuff can be corrected, and look, the game already passed, it's international friendly, we're still getting in tune, you still get the team, pump up back again. We're missing a lot of players, missing the coach, so many things to put into, the context around the game, but the performances from the girls, it wasn't accepted. Yeah, those performances that we got from the girls, we need to see better performances. If we're going to lose games at that ratio, 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, at least put in a shift on the pitch. Try to fight, try to show that passion. Just try to show that character that you out there on the battlefield. For your country. You understand? Just like any other country, will do. Much as they're losing, it's a battleground. You don't want to lose. At least win something. Look, we conceded 3 goals in that first half. At least in the second half, show a little bit of personal, show a little bit of character, and try to defend the badge, try to defend the country. But again, we're going to move on from what happened in Kansas. No, it's time for Houston, and I will say, look, Denisha Blackwood was the worst player in terms of stats. Yeah, she was the worst player on the pitch with stats. She has a lowest rated, points. Amongst all the Reggae Girls that played in that game. Why? She wasn't the worst player in terms of performances, but she was the only player that willing to take the risk, willing to do the extra little bit of stuff to get the team up front, get the team on the front foot, get the team in a little bit of attacking prowess where they could actually get something. Look, she's the only one that created the most chances in the game for the Reggae Girls. She created the little clear cut chances coming down that left hand side, and I still believe that, look, playing left back, I think we should bypass Denisha Blackwood playing in the left back position. She should be playing up further in so she can get and make those mistakes up in the final third. Look, I think it was the second goal. It was her mistake, and it was the ball continued to play it out from the back to the left hand side where she fouled the player, and from there they got a set piece and they scored. So it was from her mistake. You don't want Denisha Blackwood to be making those mistakes. We should learn our lesson from now. What happened in that game in the World Cup quarterfinals? In the World Cup run of 16 games versus Colombia, where it was a long diagonal pass around 50 to 60 yard. That ball drilled, in the air over our head. It was missed time. Look, from then until now, we should know that, look, Denisha Blackwood, have a lot more that she can offer, in the attacking final third, especially when we don't have any really, really dangerous wingers that really going to give the defenders threat, for the opposition team. So look, we should be getting Denisha Blackwood in down that left wing midfield, left wing or far, whatever it is. Easy that we go through at the back and let she play as a wing back. That will suit her best. That will suit this team really well. A 3-4-2-1, a 3-4-3, a 3-5-2. I think look, the Mexican team play with such energy, play with so much speed, play with so much creativity. They have such technical, gifted player in that midfield. We don't have any outlets out on the wing. Jodie Brown is in a shadow of herself. I don't know what is going on with Jodie Brown. So we're not having any real attacking wingers. We continue to to continue to bench, Tiffany Cameron, continue to bring her on in the second half. So when you look at it, not much real wingers that can really bring that threat to the Mexican wing backs, their defensive players. That's what I'm saying. No wing backs for us. Look, we short of a right back, we short of a left back, we massively short for wingers that can go directly 1v1 versus the defenders. 3 at the back, yeah. Kanya Plummer, the Swaby sisters, and Denisha Blackwood, going down that left hand side, and Tiffany Cameron going down on that right hand side as well. And then you can have either you're going to put Vivian Sampson in that midfield, which I think she's the best CDM in this squad at this moment, and then you maybe can make a few changes by maybe look, Jade Bailey. I don't know what happened. It wasn't her best game. I know she has a lot more than that, but probably try something a little bit. When Van Zanten came on, she actually wanted to push the ball a little bit more forward. Who else? I think it's Adam Aloken, the arts midfielder. I think we can get her out as well. We can put in, Trudy Carter. We can take out, young Simmons and get in Tiffany Cameron. So we have a few, it's not a deep pool of players with quality, but we have a few players that didn't start the last game that can actually get in the starting lineup in this game coming up later, that we can maybe Deanne can transform this team a little bit, try to use 3 at the back, try to let those 3 center half play with a lot more leadership in them, play with a lot more precise, judge the aerial passes, conceded less direct free kick, because their midfield, their set piece is such a threat to us. Even when you look at the last game, Vivian Sampson and Jade Bailey, look at their heat map. Everything that they have done in that game is within their defensive third. They did not even give us nothing, 1% in the attacking third, not one pass that channel through the channel for our attacking players. Nothing really created, for our attacking players. Everything came from the left hand side with Denisha Blackwood. So if you look at even, Alice Soto, and Delgado, their midfielders, their double pivot, they have a lot more joy, especially Delgado. She was the box to box. She was the one that, very influential in what the Mexican team do. Even Alice Soto, she was camping, in our defensive third. She was the one that, look, anything that that needs to get picked up, the little press, the little there, that little influential player that sit in the pocket of that number 10, the set piece, she was everything. She was popping out on that left hand side, she was popping out on that right hand side, she was just everywhere. And I think she's just like 2021, so she is one of the next big star in Mexican football. I must say, look, she's very good technically. She's gifted, she's very good on the ball, set piece, everything, the energy, the pace, and how she play. She take less touches off the football. She just she just want to possess the football. She want to, push the ball through the channels. So she has everything, what a midfielder should have at this level. Meanwhile, us, our players, the Jade Bailey, the Vivian, they stuck in their own defensive third, trying to, to turn towards the opposition goal. Not one time I see them picked up a ball and look up and push the ball through the channel. So I think we were so bad at that, and the heat map shows a lot. The heat map tells a lot that look, we weren't good enough as a midfielder. And look, as a team, if the midfield is not functioning, without wingers, without any true wing backs, how are we going to get stuff created? How are we going to win football games? How our midfielders will get on the end of, our strikers will get on the end of any little thing. So, McKenna was literally fighting for scraps. She, every time when she get the ball, it was like 1v3, 1v4. They were just crowded and surrounding her. So we have to play to our strength. We have to, our leaders have to come up big in the game. We have to play it a little more character. We have to show a little bit more fight in us, more passion. But the 4-4-2 is just not going to work because we don't have the personnels that playing a 4-4-2 with 2 players in that midfield versus the Mexico that play with 3 players, sometimes 4 players inside of that central part. It's like we get overrun, we get overcooked, and our players are not so athletic. So I just think maybe we can go with the 3-5-2, either the 3-4, 2-1 something, where we have a double pivot and we have 2 players that play behind the number 9, which is Kayla McKenna. We can use Jody Brown and actually Trudy Carter to play right behind Kayla McKenna as the number 9 and play a little bit narrow. So we played like with 2 10s and we play with like 2 6, so we can actually get bodies, and then we can probably push Tiffany Cameron out on that right hand side, push Denisha Blackwood out on that left hand side, and then probably from there we can go and assess the game moving forward. But it's going to be a tough game. This Mexican team is a very tough team. As I said, I called it in the preview, and Saturday about the preparation, the stride, how this team is building from a disaster of hosting the World Cup qualifiers in their own country, got knocked out by the Reggae Girls. I think look, this is like a revenge, this is like a revenge on us, so they're going to come with everything, try to beat us, you understand. But again, hope the Reggae Girls can come better. And look, if we go on to lose the game again, but show a little bit more, just give us a little bit a better performance, understand. I know it's going to be tough to get even a draw out of these 2 game series. I call it, if we get a draw, we're lucky. We bound to lose these 2 games. I watch this Mexican team. I study them. I understand what they can offer. I saw the quality of those players, and even during the commentary, the commentators, they just didn't stop calling the Denisha Blackwood, because obviously she is the quality on that pitch for the Reggae Girl. She was the only one that offering something for her. She's the only one that seems like she want to play with a little bit of a fight. She want to play some football. But I'm going to move on from there. I'm going to talk about the JPL 5 after this. So JPL 5, the 2 games that played yesterday, Arnett Garden draw, 0-0 in that West Kingston derby, and also Chapitan Maroon, beat Racing in that game. Racing beat Chapitan Maroon in that first game, and you will say, look, Racing is back up where they should be. I think it's 1 point behind 6th place, who's on 49. Racing is on 48, tie with Tivoli Garden. But Tivoli Garden, no, Racing is in 7 or 8. I think Tivoli have a better goal difference than Racing, so Tivoli is in 7th, Racing is in 8th, and Waterhouse is in 6th position and 49 points, just a few points away from Cavalier. But Racing is doing their job. Look, they are beating all the teams and that sit behind them. Since the year started, they have win all those games except Umbla and the teams that sit behind them on the day. So they average 2.2 goals versus the teams that sit behind them, in the table. So they're collecting, positive points. They're beating the weaker teams and then getting, points from, you would say the bigger boys, in the league. The Tivoli, the Arnett, the Mobier. They are not losing a lot of those games since the year started. They're just getting a lot of draw games against the tougher opponent, and that's what they're doing. Beating the smaller teams, getting the odd points versus the big guns. But the Arnett Garden, I did not see any of those games that played yesterday. I catch the last 5 minutes of the Arnett Garden game. Didn't even know that Unseen Sports was broadcasting that game, because look, I already heard from the statement that made from the Jamaican Premier League that look, there will be no game broadcast over this weekend. You understand? But on Arnett Garden, unbeaten versus Tivoli this season. Arnett Garden versus the smaller teams, they red at, but Arnett Garden versus the Tivoli, not really the Tivoli, but the Mobier, the Mount Pleasant, the Portmore, they are not so consistently, but playing teams like Racing, Umberley, and the Cavalier, they are not so. Look, I must say, Arnett Garden, versus the bigger teams, they lost against teams that who is on very, very good form. Not lost, but they drew a lot of games versus those teams. Umberland beat them before this West Kingston derby. Now they drew against Tivoli, who's on very good form. They drew with Cavalier. They drew with Montego Bay. So they continue to draw with the teams that who's on a little bit of form. Then the games that they win against the Chapelton Maroon, they win against the Dumbo Olin, they won against the Moline. So they're picking up the odd points against the smaller team, just like what Racing did. But Arnett Garden is a different opposition, so even Tivoli, they're still unbeaten. Yes, they're still unbeaten, in their last 8 games. They drew 4, they won 4, so they're just 1 point away from 6th place team, which is Waterhouse. It's there on 48, Waterhouse is on 49. So they're still in around the bits. But I mean, look, I have a problem, with games not, broadcasting, man. How can you not broadcasting the game? Look, I understand, there can be different circumstances. A lot of people, I see a lot of people calling the league Bush League, this and that. These type of stuff are Bush League syndromes. Yeah, these type of stuff are Bush League syndromes, and I must say, Sportsmax, the PFLJ, they should do a lot better. If Sportsmax have their difficulties for by not able to broadcast the league, the PFLJ, at least you guys should have a second a second TV company, someone that can help broadcast the game. Look, people in the diaspora, people locally, even in the Caribbean, paid to watch a lot of these games. You understand? So we need to do better. I think, going forward though, it would be really nice to see, the PFLJ actually can use up their YouTube platform a little bit more, broadcasting games, even when this is not the first time, Sportsmax is having their issues, and it won't be the last. I remember 2023 of December the 27th, the game, one of the most talk about game even up to today, one of the game that didn't broadcast, that the Arnett Garden versus Mount Pleasant in the rain in the complex, the game that Arnett Garden won 2-0. That's still one of the talk about game over the last couple of seasons that didn't televise, because they have their issue. They said commentator need to go on break, they need to go on vacation. Like, look, I understand people need break, but at the end of the day, the league must continue to broadcast. I can't even remember when was the last time an EPL game not broadcast. The only time an EPL game in England don't broadcast is their 3 o'clock blackout, because they want the fans to go out and watch the lower tier leagues in England. So this is why 3 o'clock game in England don't broadcast in their country. it's not televised. In Italy, they don't broadcast games, on Easter. They just literally don't play a game on Easter. And I remember a couple of seasons ago, they played a few games on Easter, and the game did not televise yet because of that reason. But the Sportsmax, PFLJ, I think, man, they should do a lot better. We need a second broadcasting company that will cover the JPL. We're having my fellow co-workers in the space, big up to Unseen Sports, big up to Bomb Sports, big up to everybody, that's including the technical staff of getting that Arctic Garden game really covered. So, a lot of people can watch it. And when I watch it in the last 50 minutes, I think it was actually close to 2K people watching the game at that time, so pick up on the socks, need to do better. This is why a lot of people will continue to call the league Bush League. Someone like me that looking out for the league, someone like me that look, the JPL is a part of my weekend. If I don't watch JPL, it take away a big chunk of piece of my weekend. So we need, people like me out there living in the diaspora, people that live across the world, wherever, need to watch a JPL, so that's all I have to say. Big up on yourself. Thanks for watching. This is Nicardo Media House with the morning inside. Bless up on yourself. Salute. I'm out.